They had a beautiful wedding. I was there. The couple was admired, and their friends couldn't wait to see their lives begin. The anticipation of their growth together and their relationship with the Lord was something that they admired. A few years later, they had some difficulty in their marriage, and they saw their counselor. But that didn't work, because he had already made up his mind that this wasn't going to work. And he wanted to break up the marriage, and so he filed for a divorce. Now, she was distraught because she was actually a very gentle and accommodating woman, admired by her friends, seen as a godly woman. And so it broke her heart. And then he met another woman. She was a fun-loving woman that he really enjoyed spending time with. And so they finally decided that it was time for a marriage. But the problem was with her is she was too fun-loving. And late nights and alcohol was part of her fun, but it wasn't too much for him. And she eventually didn't want to spend time with him, so she was the one who initiated this divorce. The second marriage ended in a second divorce. Then he met another woman. And we don't know what's going to happen with this one. Is this going to be the end of his pursuit of the perfect wife? So how many times do you have to experience pain in order not to do the same thing that caused it? Normal people would say once. Deal with pain once and never want to see it again. For children, it's like 30 or 40 times. Parents have to get them 30 to 40 times and say, I think I'll avoid that kind of pain again. How is it with you and the Lord? Negative experiences we never want to see again. Positive experiences we want to see over and over. But when it comes to your relationship with the Lord, how do you treat pain? This is actually a second incident of feeding masses of numbers of people by Jesus, because in chapter 6 he fed 5,000. And it's like deja vu except for the numbers. 5,000, 4,000, 5 fish, 7 fish, or 5 loaves, 7 loaves, a couple of fish, a few fish. This is the second time, and it's like deja vu because it's almost verbatim what happened. They were in a remote place. Jesus got wordy, so to speak. He preached for a long time. And they were in a remote place and they couldn't buy any food. The food trucks weren't available back then. And the food trucks didn't follow the crowd. So they couldn't have any food. And maybe the people weren't planning to be there that long, and so they didn't pack anything. The first time it was a boy's lunch, we see in other Gospels. Here we don't know where they got the food. Probably grabbed somebody's lunch too. Probably the same kid. We don't know. But what happened was, Jesus asked the disciples, what should we do? Or, you feed them. And they said, no, it's impossible. And right about then, you would ask yourself the question, wait a minute, didn't the disciples experience feeding of the 5,000 a couple of chapters ago? I don't know how many days ago it was. Maybe a few days, maybe a month. It doesn't matter. It should have had such an impact that they should have said, Jesus, we'll just group them, we'll grab something from somebody's lunch bag, and then you can multiply it just like you did before. Problem solved. Did they do that? No, they didn't do that. They went right back to the way that they answered Jesus' question the first time. We don't have anything. This is a remote place. Nobody can buy enough food for them. The same complaint. And Jesus asked them, well, how much do you have? Well, we have 7 loaves this time. We have a few fish. So he prays, just like he did before. He multiplies the food. And then they have to collect the leftovers. And I think by this time they got the lesson. Because the first time they had 12 basketfuls of leftovers, and this time 7 basketfuls of leftovers. And you know what happens when you have leftovers? Or what is the indication when you have leftovers? Everybody had plenty, okay? Nobody would throw away food when they're hungry, but they'll throw away food when they're full. So, we know that they had plenty to eat, and Jesus satisfied them with a small amount of food. Now, this is what Einstein discovered, that with a little bit of material, you can have a great impact. And that's how the atomic bomb, the nuclear bomb, was created, by his understanding of it has potential. When energy is equal to mass times the acceleration of the speed of light squared, that's a lot of power. And so Einstein expressed physically what Jesus did spiritually. That the miracle of something, almost something from nothing, because it wasn't from nothing, multiplication of impact was right here. So Einstein wasn't the first to invent this thing. Jesus was. Okay? So they had plenty, and they were satisfied, and they were sent home. What we don't have in the 2 passages is very, very strange. And so we have to ask some questions because this happened. In this text, the Pharisees came and began to question Jesus to test him. They asked him for a sign from heaven. He sighed deeply and said, "Why does this generation ask for a miraculous sign? I tell you the truth, no sign will be given to it." Then he left them, got back in the boat, and crossed to the other side. Every time I read the Bible and things like this happen, I go nuts. And the reason why I go nuts is because Pharisees, hello? Didn't you just see what happened? He fed 4,000 men, plus women and children, with 7 loaves and 2, 3, maybe 4 fish. Isn't that sign enough for you? What kind of sign are you looking for? They asked for it, Jesus says no. And I'm scratching my head again. Wait a minute, Jesus, didn't you already? Why don't you just tell them, didn't you see it plainly? I just did it. So I'm getting all confused because of this dialogue. What do they really want? Do they want a better sign? Do they want a bigger sign? Do they want something that they can say, oh yeah, that's really a miracle? I mean, open the eyes of the blind, raise somebody from the dead, make people hear, heal the paraplegic, the quadriplegic. I mean, cast out demons. What do they want? Isn't that enough? Didn't Jesus give you enough variety of miracles to convince you that he was the Son of God? They want more signs. I don't get it. Jesus says no. I'm thinking, what? Why don't you just repeat what you did? And then he left them, got back into the boat, and crossed over to the other side, it says. He just left them. He said no. He left. Well, if we compare these two in detail, we see that they're very, very similar, and then the first one was just like the second one with, as I said, minor changes. prays for the food, has him sit down, he eats, and he collects the baskets of leftovers. And I was always wondering, where did he get the baskets? Somebody said, I know he's going to have leftovers, and he carried, I think we're going to need exactly 12 for the first one. And then for the second one, we're going to need exactly 7 for the second one. Where did he get that? I don't know. The Lord not only provided for the meal of the masses, but he also provided for the baskets so that they would get the point that I not only provide, but I provide abundantly. Nobody's going to say, oh, no more food left. But there's a little bit more room in here. I'd like to eat a little bit more. Nobody had that complaint. Everything, all the compartments of the stomach were full. And then the disciples had to learn the lesson by collecting the leftovers. And honestly, the food, I believe, the food never got thrown away. You know what that means, don't you? The disciples were reminded every day of their lack of faith. Guess what we have for breakfast today? Fish and chips. Guess what we have for lunch today? Fish and chips. Guess what we have for dinner today? Fish and chips. They probably were eating it for a long time. Being reminded on every single day, yeah, silly us. Yeah, silly us. Yeah, silly us, for a long time. They're just being reminded. We should have believed. Maybe he wouldn't have allowed as many leftovers. So, why would the Lord repeat himself? Why would the Lord say the same thing? Or why would the Lord do the same thing? Why would he do the same miracle? Well, maybe, the person didn't hear what was said the first time. Johnny! Things like he doesn't hear. Johnny! Okay? So you say it again because Johnny didn't hear the first time. Right? Wherever Johnny is. So this Johnny. Well, remember, my son was I think he was probably about 7 months, 6 months, and he could understand me, of course, at that age, and I would always say, give me a kiss, and he would give me a kiss. But one day he tried to challenge me. Okay. So I said to him, while he was being held by my wife, I said to him, give me a kiss. This is Simeon, my firstborn, okay? And he just didn't turn around and he didn't kiss me, right? So I said, did he not hear me, or is he ignoring me? So the experiment was, I flicked him right in the leg. I said, that's disobedience, right? And then he turned around and he kissed me. It wasn't that he didn't hear. He was challenging me. He said, I'm going to ignore you and see what happens. Okay? So here, the disciples, I'm going to ignore you for the first lesson. And so they had to eat and eat and eat the leftovers. So you repeat yourself because maybe the person didn't hear. Repeat yourself because you were ignored, legitimately ignored. Or maybe the second time was for emphasis. I want you to get this lesson. Solidly get this lesson. But we know they were defective because they approached it the same way, naturally, by sight, by pocketbook. Because that's all they knew. So this is how you handle a problem. You handle it by putting money into it. You handle it in a natural way. You don't expect God to intervene. You don't expect the supernatural to come through. So Jesus did it twice. And then, why do you repeat yourself? To emphasize the importance of it. Remember I told you, holy, holy, holy. Okay, if you say holy, God is holy, He's holy. But if you say it's holy and holy, 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 twice, then it's better than holy. And if you say it a third time, it's a superlative. So, good, better, and best. Fast, faster, and the fastest. So Jesus repeated Himself twice to emphasize the reality and the magnitude of it. So when you and I live and we interact with the Lord, we always have to anticipate the supernatural intervention of our God. Not just in our mission trips. And we always anticipate that God would intervene and come through and send people that He had already prepared. And so when we talk to Him, it's like, oh man, he was already like groomed, prepared. All of these things needed to happen before He met us. And so when we bring the gospel, they go, oh yeah, see how it lines up. Just like the woman at the well. She was prepared. And when Jesus spoke to her and mentioned all of these things, oh yeah, I know, the Messiah, when He shows up, He's going to explain all of this to me, or to us. And Jesus says, I am He. Finally! So the preparation was already done. We expect that in a mission trip, but do you expect that in your own household? Do you expect, this is the encouragement that I give to dads. My job is this, and I'm so away, traveling too much, and away from the family, can't participate in this. And I'm like, slap him on the head and go, you idiot, get a different job. If the job is taking you away from your role as husband and father to your children, then get another job. Is not God capable of giving you a better and a different job? Can He multiply the time that you have with the job so that you will always be, you'll be more proficient and still make the same money? And then I have to warn them. I have to smack them again. Smacking a lot of dads. Spiritually. Smacking the dad. And I have to ask the father, are you over-providing for your family? Yeah, you need to provide for your family, that's right. But are you over-providing for your family? Because over-providing has consequences. And maybe you're over-providing and that's why you're away from the family. You want to do more. You want upward mobility. Where is that written? Who gave you that idea? The emphasizing of the importance of a criteria. Walking with the Lord. Discerning what He wants us to do. Maybe a lesson we need to learn over and over because we didn't get it the first time. And then the second one, of course, or the last one, why somebody repeats, is so that you would never forget it. I remember a line in a movie, the Knights of the Round Table, or one movie where the swearing philosophy or the truth that they had to follow was repeated to them by the senior, and then the junior had to memorize it. And after he repeated the truth, the reality, the motto, the guy smacked him on the face. He goes, and this, and he smacked him, is so that you will remember what I said. So the smack was attached to the saying. And so the saying was memorable because the smack was memorable. Well, what a technique. Come here, child. Honor your father and your mother. That way you'll remember it. And I thought, what a technique. I wonder how palatable that would be. So Jesus here seems to have not only repeated the lesson for not getting it, because the disciples didn't getting it, but for all those other reasons too. So he did the same thing both times. They didn't learn it from the first time because they were just thinking about the limitations. They were only thinking about the limitations. In other words, they're limited in doing this. That was their mentality the first time. We can't do it. Costs too much money. And Jesus is standing right in front of them, asking him the question. How? Wow. And I'm thinking, dumb disciples. And as soon as I slap them, I go, wait a minute. I'm one of them. I do that all the time. That Jesus is not going to come through for me. One of the recent lessons that I learned, as I was reflecting over what Jesus was saying about my life situation and all that, was this. When he says, what credit is that to you if you love those who love you? Pagans do that. You see non-Christians loving non-Christians. Non-Christian dads loving their non-Christian families. You know, one of the most amazing things is how a human trafficker loves his own family. And a couple of movies brought that out. He goes home after snatching some other, child or adult and shipping them to somewhere else, selling them. He goes home to his family and treats his family really well. Doesn't even have a clue. Hey, if somebody did that to my daughter, how would I feel? If somebody did that to my child, how would I feel? They don't know. It's a totally clouded. It's obscure. It's intentional blindness. They just love their families. I'm going, here is a drug dealer, a corporate drug owner, whatever it is, cocaine, whatever he sells. And he's an owner of that. And he masterminds all these things. Goes home and loves his family. Non-Christians do that. Okay? So what credit is that to him? And if we're Christians and we only love our own families or our own church members, what credit is that to us? Okay? That's one lesson. That's what Jesus said. But recently, it's been like this. Okay? How much money do you have in your wallet? And what credit is that to you if you give away $5 of the $25 in your wallet? Anybody can do that. So I was challenged by that. So I started emptying it. Because I don't get any credit if I have abundance and I give them my leftovers. Now, just like the woman who had 2 pennies left to her name and she gave that up. And God says, she gave more than everybody else. Because she gave to her own poverty rather than to her abundance. If she gave it away, that's it. She has nothing. Now she has to rely on the Lord. So what credit is that to us? We have to learn the lesson. We're not just looking at natural intervention, we're talking about supernatural intervention. And if Jesus is able to create something from nothing as he did in Genesis, and if he's able to multiply the materials that we have, there was an amazing lesson in college where my roommate told me, I just asked God to multiply the time. Yeah, I only study 8 hours, including 8 hours a day, including class. So 4 hours of classes, then I just study 4 more hours, and that's it. I go, how do you do that? And he goes, I don't study on Sundays. I take that day off. So, well, you're crazy. But no, he went from because he took a lot of drugs, marijuana and stuff, he went from a 1.3 to like a 3 point something, doing that. And I'm going, that doesn't make sense. Did you know Chick-fil-A makes more money and increases its percentage annually faster than any other franchise chain? And they take Sundays off. They don't even work on Sundays, so they have 1 day revenue. But even though they have that, the Lord gives them enough revenue during the week to beat them for 7 days, when they only work 4 or 6. Try to figure that out. The math doesn't work. I mean, 5 loaves and 2 fish for 5,000. 5 loaves and 7 loaves and some fish for 4,000. How do you feed them? The math just doesn't work. The Lord must be using a different calculator. Because this calculator, my calculator, doesn't work like that. So He provides, He multiplies. Food, time, value. He multiplies value. Even if it's something small. And then He provided the baskets. If you're going to collect the leftovers, you've got to have baskets. And then there is no third feeding. We don't have recorded a third feeding. I think if the third feeding came up, the disciples would have jumped up and said, Jesus, what should we do? I know you're going to feed them. Okay? It would be too easy then. Because they got it by then. Second lesson was it. That's all they needed. But the Pharisees' comment is interesting. Because they're the ones who show up and say, hey, we need a sign. Like, stupid. I gave you numbers of signs, but you weren't hearing it. You put these huge, Bose headphones on and didn't pay attention. You put blinders on and didn't pay attention. Then after everything was done, you took it off and said, hey, Jesus, do a miracle for us. I'm sure Jesus would have loved to slap him and say, wake up. Because that's what I would have done, but He's more righteous than I, so He didn't do it. He just said, nope, I'm leaving. Because their hardness of heart was preventing them from seeing what was in front of them. And He said, I don't want to deal with it. And if you want to really deal with it, then come to me. And the Pharisee who did that was Nicodemus. Nicodemus was the one who came privately and said, Jesus, man, you've already demonstrated some things. And I am totally blown away by that. And then Jesus doesn't even give him the opportunity to detail those things out. He said, I know why you came. You got to be born again. He said, this is the primary issue for you, Pharisee. The primary issue for you is that you have to be born again. I have to live inside of you. The Holy Spirit has to jump in. And then he had to explain the Holy Spirit and all of that stuff to him. Had a great conversation. And we know later on, we get a hint of it, that Nicodemus actually became a believer. You want a sign? Nope. So if He's able to give them more signs, why doesn't He do it? Because of their hardness of heart. But there's a lot of things that He can do. And He is capable of doing it, but He just doesn't do it. He just says no. So is He able to prevent evil? Absolutely. But does He? No. And we talked about this, and we'll talk about this till the cows come home. It will always be an issue. If God is able to prevent evil, then why doesn't He do it? If He's able to prevent accidents, why doesn't He do it? If He's able to give us more opportunities, why doesn't He? If He's able to provide a husband, why doesn't He? If He's able to prevent heart disease, why doesn't He? He doesn't. For some people, they just have a heart attack. doesn't stop it. And we can say the same thing for every negative experience in life. If He's able to prevent it, why doesn't He? Well, let's ask ourselves the same question. If we're able to, and we can decide to eat better, why don't we? If we are able to say kind words, why don't we? If we are able to be more generous, why aren't we? If we're able to not go there, in terms of committing whatever it is, crime, adultery, whatever, negative, why don't we? Let's make some application. Don't mistake, I won't give you a sign with, I can't give you a sign. In other words, know that Jesus is capable. He's already demonstrated that. We know that He is capable, and here He's demonstrating that He is capable. Jesus can do anything. He doesn't even have to be there. He can drive out demons by saying, the demon's gone now. They go home and find it just the way it is. He doesn't even have to be present. Remember, he can remote control heal. Done. He can feed us with a morsel. So you don't have anything in your cupboard? He can still feed you. He can feed you with the crumbs between your van seats. Multiply that. Okay. I know, I got 6 kids. I find food everywhere. Nice and dry. It's not bad. It didn't go bad because it wasn't wet. It didn't all moldy, right? But sometimes I find those too. He can get us married. He can find us a house. He can raise our graves. Really? Ooh, we can try that. I'll go home and pray. He can lower our blood pressure and the amount of stress that we experience. He can change your mind. One of the hardest things that God has to do in my life is change my mind. Because if I make up my mind not to forgive, He's got to change that. If I make up my mind to be greedy, He's got to change that. If I make up my mind I'm not going to say sorry to my wife, He's got to change that. And He is capable of changing it, let me tell you. He is capable of changing your mind. He is capable of changing your children's mind. He's capable of changing your parents' mind. He's capable of changing the police's mind, the president's mind, whoever. He's capable of doing that. And one of the advice that I had to give several dating couples who wanted to get married, they were potential mixed marriages. One was Korean and the other one wasn't. And most of the time it's the Korean daughter and some other nationality husband potential, okay, the boyfriend. And the Korean dad doesn't want that. He's a little prejudiced. Okay? Even if he's a Christian, he may feel like that. And so, my dad doesn't like him. What should we do? I said, can God change his mind? That's my question. Can God change your father's mind? Well, ask Him to change your father's mind. Work on your relationship with Him until He does, and then pursue the marriage. Because this is what's going to happen. If there's disobedience or dishonoring, it's going to take a while to get that together. But if you wait and ask God to change that, is He capable? If He really wants you to be married, is He able to do that? And He will. then you two can be married. If he doesn't change his mind, then maybe God says, no, this is not the one for you. Is that possible? Absolutely. God can change our minds. Whom are we relying on for our lives? And finally, the hope of hopes is that Jesus can bring somebody back from the dead and make the heart soft, as in spiritually dead too, and make the heart soft so that the person will be receptive to the gospel. We can pray for that. And then we can tell them the gospel, and then they are able to come to faith. And that's what Jesus does. He softens the hearts and brings the person, draws the person to himself, and maybe he'll use you. What a joy that is. So know that Jesus is capable, and know that Jesus does things on his terms. Okay? Now, no matter how passionately we want something, he doesn't have to give it to us. We need to accept that. If he wants to do it, great. If he doesn't want to do it, great. We still follow him anyway. We don't tell him what to do. The disciples didn't struggle with the fact that Jesus wanted to do this miracle to feed them. And Jesus didn't want to do it their way. Their way was, get some money, buy some pizzas, and give everybody else a slice. No Domino's back then. No phone orders, no deliveries. Sorry. Jesus wanted to do it this way, and that's how he did it. Your method was just send them away. I don't want to bother. I don't want to bother with these people. I don't want to feed them. I don't want to take care of them. Let them just go and do their own thing, spend their own money. I don't want to deal with it. Especially because there are Pharisees around in the crowd, spying on us, and I don't want to feed them. The Pharisees wanted a miracle. I don't know what kind of miracle they were looking for, but Jesus said, no, not doing any more today. Forget it. And so when we approach Jesus and we ask for something, it's his prerogative to say no. We need to accept that. And then finally, we follow his lead. We don't lead Jesus. Jesus leads us. Wow, what a simple concept, right? So hard to do. If you are frustrated, if you're disappointed that when you pray for something, he doesn't give it to you, guess what? That's an example. If we follow him, he doesn't follow us. What do you want to do with this situation then? If you're not answering my prayer, then what do you want to do with this situation? Let me follow you instead of demanding that you follow me. Instead of telling you how to take care of these people, okay, tell me how we need to take care of these people. Have them sit down and let them eat what I give them right here. The disciples were told to distribute the food. So while they're experiencing the miracles, just keeping the Lord keeps distributing the bread and the fish. It just keeps coming out of his hands. Okay. Puts one there, or 5 there, and 5 more here. 5. Wait a minute. It just keeps going. It's like water on a fountain, a stream. You just keep drinking, and it keeps coming out. And that's what Jesus was doing. He's distributing the fish and the bread, and it just keeps coming out. The disciples had to follow him, obey him, and keep distributing. And every time he's passing something out, Peter is saying, where is this coming from? This is amazing. Oh, I gotta go back and get some more, because you guys need to be fed, and you guys need to be fed. And every time he does this, when he's serving, he's being reminded Jesus is doing this. Where is it coming from? This is amazing. But I'm so glad I'm involved in the ministry of Jesus, of feeding these people. Thank you for the opportunity. And then Jesus is saying, oh, all right, collect them all. So they take the baskets, which Jesus, I don't know how, and they have to go and collect them all. Still following Jesus. Okay. Here we are. Do you need the same miracle twice to really learn? Sometimes we do. And we are grateful and praise God that He does so that we will learn it. That declares His patience and His care for us so that we will continue to grow closer to Him. It's in His initiation and His compassion and His grace that encourages us through example that this is the kind of relationship that I want with you. And I am leading you to follow me. We are so grateful, Father, that you are patient with us and you demonstrate through life that whatever we need, you are willing to do. Thank you for teaching us lessons twice because we need it. And then thank you for giving us the example to follow, that we not only deal with things naturally, but we deal with things spiritually, so that you will receive the glory and so that we can know you better through our life experiences as you work in us. Praise you for that.